Every once in a while, Eddie, when I'm driving into work, I think about what it would be like to do this job in a different city. Now, admittedly, there's no way that I could do this job in any other city. Not because I wouldn't want to, per se, but because I just don't know. I have the utmost respect for people that do national radio, because to have to talk about all the different franchises, all the different teams, and have it beyond just the surface would be difficult, I think.
Also, how much useless knowledge do you know about other cities?
That's it. That's exactly right. Just the total overall history of a city, the little, fun fact nuances. You can't reference the Brass Penguins at Glendale and those sorts of things in whatever the equivalent is in Denver, unless you grew up there, right? Or, make a comment like you missed the ice cream at GD Ritzy's. People are like, what? But give me, for example, an NFL city.
Seattle.
I love Seattle, by the way.
You had to know that I was going to mention Seattle. Come on.
You're
now.
a big fan of Seattle as well.
I
know,
love
right?
Seattle.
But yeah, I mean, I could reference Jim Zorn and Steve Largent and Kurt Warner, the one with a C and not a K.
Sean
and I could
Alexander.
reference John Kitna and Sean Alexander and,
Ken Griffey Jr., Ken Griffey Sr.
Totally, right? Well.
Edgar Martinez.
And now the big dumper, right?
Yeah.
But to get into the depths of it would be tough.
Ichiro.
And so I was thinking about, on my way in, what would it be like to do sports talk radio in Chicago? Now, you would have right now, sure, you could always talk about the Bulls. You could always talk about the Blackhawks. I don't think they mentioned DePaul much, but you could mention it if you wanted to. I don't think they even have any idea they're in the same state as the University of Illinois, but you could talk about the Illinois-Indiana game coming up Saturday night, 7:30, that you can hear on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan in Indianapolis, right? You could mention those things. But in Chicago right now, if I was doing that job, this almost would be the low-hanging fruit. And it seems to be the obvious storyline. But it relates to Indianapolis. If you were doing this job, Eddie, in Chicago, and you're talking Bears football, yes, Caleb Williams is a big storyline for you, right?
Yeah. I think there'd be a bigger storyline in Chicago right now than Caleb Williams and the Bears versus the Cowboys this weekend.
In terms of the Bears?
Well, right now I think they would be talking about...
obviously they'd be talking about the Cubs getting into the postseason.
Bingo.
I get that.
Yeah.
But in terms of the Bears...
Big series coming up against the Reds, Jake.
What would be if you were doing sports talk radio in Chicago and a Bears fan calls in and you're doing open phone lines about the Bears, what is the first thing that a Bears fan would have to be looking at? It's only 2 games. It's only 2 games. But what is the first thing that a Bears fan would have to be calling in saying, what in the world were they doing?
It's a great question.
What's the biggest question as it relates to Indianapolis? There's a reason I'm bringing it up. As it relates to Indianapolis, what is the thing that the Bears did in the last year, 10 months, as it relates to Indianapolis, that if you were a Bears fan, you would have to be using it as the poster child of this organization has no idea what it's doing?
The drafting of Caleb Williams and the development of Caleb Williams? Is that where you're going with this?
I think Caleb Williams is starting to show a little bit.
He did look better in week 2 against Detroit, I will say that.
Here's the thing. How much better would Caleb Williams look if he had Tyler Warren? You forget that the Chicago Bears passed on Tyler Warren.
Yeah.
And instead have Colston Loveland as their tight end, who has 2 catches on 3 targets so far on the year. Now, Tyler Warren didn't even practice yesterday.
He did not. Toe injury, Jake.
Now, that toe injury, Tyler Warren with 9 good toes is better than Colston Loveland with 10 of them. If you're a Bears fan, you have to be saying, what in the world? Because Tyler Warren is that guy. And I know that we're 2 games into it. And defenses are going to adjust, and film is going to be out there, and people are going to start taking away looks. But I'm telling you, and I said this a year ago. A year ago, before the year even began, I said that Liatu Latu was going to be the AFC Defensive Rookie of the Year, and I was wrong. I think it's just NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. But either way, I was wrong. And it's only 2 games. And I don't want to, just automatically blanket statement anything. But the way that Tyler Warren has already shown that he is, I'm telling you, I believe he is the epicenter of the Colts offense. And the reason I bring all of this up is because who would have thought that going into game number 3 against the Tennessee Titans coming up this Sunday, that one of the big storylines would be the health or availability of a rookie player. Because you have Michael Pittman, and you have Jonathan Taylor, and you have A.D. Mitchell, and you have Alec Pierce. But I really think that a lot of what those guys do kind of spins off of, if you will, what Tyler Warren is able to bring to the table and the fact that defenses have to be aware of where he is at all times. But, Eddie, fill me in, because it happened just after we got off the air yesterday, kind of in the transition into John, is when we found out from a practice standpoint yesterday that Tyler Warren not available, and you said toe injury, correct?
That is correct.
I shouldn't say not available. Sorry, total misquote there.
He did not participate in practice.
Participate, yes.
I will say that Kevin Bowen and I did a podcast yesterday. Of course, listen to that. Not during the course of our show or GMV show, but Kevin did say that he was walking around pretty gingerly. So something to monitor. Didn't know if that was injury related or just the fact that he played 66 snaps on Sunday and was feeling a little sore still.
Now, he is not the only catching passes from Daniel Jones who yesterday did not practice, correct?
That is accurate.
Because the other one, Josh Downs, right?
Yes.
And he has an ankle.
Yes.
We all have an ankle.
He's got 2 of them.
Actually, I guess technically speaking, we all have 4 ankles, do we not?
Explain.
Well, don't you have an ankle on, doesn't each foot have 2 ankles?
I thought it was just 1 ankle.
Don't you have a left ankle and a right ankle?
Yes. So you would have 2 ankles.
Yeah, but on one foot. I'm saying on your right foot, don't you have an ankle on the right side and an ankle on the left side?
No, it's like no. You have 1 ankle.
But the knobs, I think of the ankle as being the knob. I can hit the knob on the left and not on the right.
You have 1 ankle, Jake, on each foot or on each leg. You have 2 ankles.
But okay, understood. But I'm saying so if on my right foot, if I have an ankle sprain, is it the knob on the left or the knob on the right?
It's still an ankle sprain.
I think of your ankle. I think of your foot having 2 ankles. I realize it's probably 1 bone, but I think of it as 2 ankles because you have 2 knobs, right?
Stop it.
So which foot is it that Downs has the ankle injury?
We don't really know. It just says ankle.
You know why we don't know? Because he has 4 of them.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Should we call up Ralph Reef again to settle this? Come on.
You have 2 ankles, 1 on each leg.
Told you. Thank you. We just wasted the last 3 minutes of our listeners' ears.
But it has 2 tendons, right? Each ankle has 2 tendons. So there are 4 places you can sprain it. Isn't that right?
I don't know.
Good afternoon to you. It is a Thursday. My name is Jake Query. That is Eddie Garrison. It is Query & Company here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. There is a lot to discuss today. We will get to not how many ankles we have, but rather what exactly might be, say, the Achilles for the Indianapolis Colts and what Tennessee might try to take advantage of. And for that fact, what Tennessee offers in terms of susceptibility. On Thursdays, we do take a road trip each and every Thursday. We're going down to Nashville because we're going to talk about what's taking place with the Titans and what they might be game planning for. And when we do so, Eddie will act like he is on the back of one of the Bachelorette buses, right?
Woo!
The thing that here's the beauty of it. When Eddie does that, he leans all the way back in his seat and looks like he's falling out of the seat when he does that. Is that to imply that that's what the Bachelorettes are doing?
Well, see, Jake, I can only woo at a loud pitch, and I don't want to get up close to the microphone and do it because then it could be bad.
I do like the way that you do your bachelorette pitch.
And I have to do the arm because I don't know. I just got to feel the full part, you know?
The arm is the best part about the whole thing.
Yeah.
But we will, coming up at about 2 o'clock, I believe, we're going to head down to Nashville and get the perspective from the Titans. Tom Dienhart going to join the program today at 1 o'clock. Of course, we will talk about Purdue and Notre Dame, which is a little more intriguing than I think we might have said so a month ago. We will get into that. Tony East going to join the program 1 o'clock hour as well, because a big one tonight for the Fever. Matt Taylor, the voice of the Colts, will join us before we wrap things up. But let's kind of go in order there, and let's begin with Purdue and Notre Dame, actually, coming up on Saturday. Interesting game to me because, you know, I think Purdue, going into the year, we really didn't know who or what Purdue was. All that we knew was that and I think that you can look back now on, you know, just what's taken place within Purdue football and Ryan Walters, and the way that Ryan Walters, I think, was extremely highly thought of when he was coming out of Illinois as a coordinator. And you never know how guys are going to be when you shift from coordinator into head coach and you've got to oversee everything. And from everything I've heard, read, etc., it wasn't that he didn't know football. It wasn't that he didn't know, let's say, players or schemes. I think there was just by all account, a lack of discipline or organization throughout the program. A lot of it being the assistant coaches, just I don't know that they were like on task all the time. I think, you know, just you had no accountability across the board. And I think Purdue realized very quickly that that was something that needed to change. And so, and what's interesting is when they made the coaching change, it was not, I'm trying to remember, Eddie, do you remember how long it was before, how long that job was even open, or how many people apparently or allegedly were interviewing for it?
I don't think we fully know, Jake. It was open for a while, though.
Because there were, I can't remember what names were out there, but Barry Odom kind of came, I'm not going to say out of left field, but all of a sudden it was like, hey, they got their guy and it's Barry Odom. But one of the things that because UNLV football isn't something that you look at and go, wow. But I think in any line of business, in any line of work, anything that you do, one of the things you want to look for is like precision. And you may not be the best in terms of an overall talent, but you don't want to be a team that is going out and no matter what you're doing and making your own mistakes, hurting yourself. And I think Purdue, that was the calling card about Purdue under Barry Odom, is what it was going to be, which was, we have no idea what talent they're going to have this year. They have all new players, but they are going to be just a more sound football team. And yes, they had red zone deficiencies against USC. And USC is a really good test for them, and I know that USC was pretty much in control of that game. But it was not a game when you were watching it that you felt like Purdue didn't have their chances. Notre Dame, on the other hand, yes, they're 0-2, but at the same time, they are, let's face it, like you knew going in that they're two big games. I think the Texas A&M game is the one that really hurts because you allowed A&M down the field to kind of carve you up defensively and get that last score. But I think Notre Dame obviously presents challenge for Purdue, but Purdue is going to have to be more efficient within the red zone. At the same time, though, I think they have a puncher's chance against Notre Dame, but then again, is Notre Dame a legit 0-2? I know they are 0-2. You get what I'm saying. Or is Notre Dame still a top 10, top 15 team? Because Notre Dame's two losses are both pretty forgivable. Now, Notre Dame knows they've got to win out probably to get into the college football playoff, and so do they feel like they have to make a resounding entry here on win number one against Purdue? Does Purdue feel like they were within range against USC and there's just a couple of areas? What areas would those be where that Purdue needs to close the gap on. My long-winded point here is I do think Barry Odom is bringing to Purdue so far what it was that we expected, which was that, yes, they may not – we have no idea what their talent level is going to be in terms of just this group that you had to kind of throw together in terms of your roster, because they had, I mean, how many transfer portal guys and whatever else. But at the same time, I think you can see the foundation there of a style of play that is going to make them a team that's going to be competitive in the Big Ten within, say, a year. But, you know, where are they right now? This is a huge measuring stick for that, for sure. But we'll talk to Tom Dienhart about that coming up. And then the Fever tonight in action down in Atlanta. Eddie Garrison will have the pregame for that coming up at 7:15, tip at 7:30. Eddie, bottom line, tonight for the Fever, win or come back home and stay there, right?
Win or go home, yes, Jake. Win or go home tonight against the Atlanta Dream down in Georgia.
You know, it feels like it's as simplistic as saying if their outside shot goes in, there you go. Because that, but then again, I don't know in game number 2 if it was as much about the Fever hitting shots on the perimeter as it was the Fever denying Atlanta any sort of offensive consistency, in particular in Atlanta's backcourt. Because, you know, the foul disparity in game 1 actually favored, when you look at that game in game 1 and the technicals and you know, the volatility of the Fever, the game was not officiated in a way that was in some sort of shape or form really favoring Atlanta. But Indiana just was not hitting from the outside. They were able to do so in game 2, but I think, Eddie, the bigger thing was they just were able to deny any sort of cohesiveness in the backcourt play of Atlanta in game 2.
I mean,
and
they just did a much better job in game 2 at running Atlanta off the three-point line and getting out in transition because they were getting stops defensively. Like, that is where Indiana is going to have to, as you like to say, wet its whistle on offense right now, is by getting out in transition, just because that's how you can combat a team like the Dream, who want to play physical and they want to get all up in your space defensively. You don't let them, you know, get into their set defensive set division. If I can talk today, my goodness, their set defensive whatever they want to do sets, and then you're able to generate easy looks at the basket.
You ever have a friend that just wants to get all up in your face?
All the time.
Do you have? Everybody knows that guy, don't they? Like the guy that just you're like, that has no understanding of, maybe that's me. Do you ever wonder if you're that guy? Do you ever wonder if, like, gosh, to the people around me, am I the one that's not getting social cues? Like, we all have that one person that we're like, nice guy, nice gal, whatever, like him, but just like doesn't read the room on when the conversation's over. And then I think to myself sometimes, you know, that might be me.
It's not me. I don't get all up in your grill.
What about this? Do you ever make a joke that, like, you're making a flippant comment, and then after the fact you look back and you go, maybe I should have filtered that one?
No.
Ever?
No, I usually think about what I say before I say it.
Yeah. Do you think it all the way through? Have you ever had one, though, where you didn't think it all the way through and you're like, gosh, I didn't think about the fact that they might see it a different way? I guess that's a better way of saying it.
Sometimes, but usually I'm pretty thorough with how I think things through before I, start speaking, or as I'm speaking.
Okay, fair enough. By the way, you do have one ankle on each foot, although the ankle has two main parts, the upper ankle and the lower ankle, meaning the one word I can't pronounce, joint, and then another word I can't pronounce, joint. These two parts allow for different types of foot movement. So you got an upper ankle, a lower ankle on both sides. I'm telling you, you got 4 ankles.
No.
Yeah, you do.
No.
Mm-hmm. I'm just telling you. You know, I don't know if you know this or not, but a lot of times when a guy has an ankle injury, they'll say, well, we're waiting to see if his second ankle on that foot is able to kind of pick up the slack a little bit. And then if not, then he's probably going to be out. Like Josh Downs has the ankle injury. We don't know which of the 4 ankles it is. So, and we don't know on which foot it is, whether or not the other one is going to be able to compensate, right? It's actually known in medically speaking. And listen, I'm not a doctor, but I took a Sally Struthers class once. It's called the compensatory ankle.
Okay.
It is. That's the ankle that picks up the slack when the other half of the ankle doesn't work well. They're like, well, it's really going to come down to what happens with the compensatory ankle.
Well, I must be the compensatory ankle because I'm picking up the slack for you.
I'm just telling you.
How about David Malukas, Jake? Finally, with Team Penske, we finally got that one.
That is indeed official now. David Malukas will drive the number 12 Verizon Chevrolet for Roger Penske. And that means that each domino that we had told you, and I, under no stretch of the imagination were we alone in, certainly on that one. That was the worst kept secret in motorsport. But when Will Power left Penske, I had told you, Power was going to go and take Colton Herta's ride because Colton Herta was going to go to Europe, and David Malukas was going to take Will Power's ride. And then the next and theoretically last domino to fall amongst all of this is Rinus VeeKay, who was driving for Dale Coyne. He was on a 1-year deal. He declined an offer to extend that for now. And it looks like Rinus VeeKay is going to move on from that team. And there has been a ton of thought. And I had said after Nashville that one of the things that I strongly believed was that Team Penske has been watching Rinus VeeKay for a while and have very favorable thought on Rinus VeeKay, both in terms of his driving ability and just his presentation, all of it, his skill set, his personality, all things. And they have never had the timing to be able to acquire Rinus VeeKay. When VeeKay declined the offer for Dale Coyne, it created a lot of question or speculation as to if there was something lined up elsewhere. The thought process was that the replacement for David Malukas was a natural for Rinus VeeKay because that would put him within, because of the technical alliance between AJ Foyt Racing and Penske, that then puts him kind of in a retainer situation like Malukas had with Foyt that would allow Team Penske to have VeeKay kind of within their umbrella. There is now speculation that Rinus VeeKay could actually be in discussion with Team Rahal, and Rahal is a Honda team, and obviously the other are Chevrolet. He's driven with Chevrolet with Ed Carpenter, and then last year with Honda with Dale Coyne. So I don't think the engine manufacturer per se is a big factor in that, but that would be my anticipation for a while, is that the next domino to fall right after David Malukas was going to be VeeKay going over there, but now apparently Rahal throws a bit of a monkey wrench into that. And then you have Connor Daly with the money that he has from AMPM and trying to determine, I think, where it is that he would end up and wind up. But let's get back into the Colts in terms of running the engine on all cylinders for Sunday against Tennessee. We will get you caught up on the injury report and who may, in fact, not be available when they get set to play. We will do that coming up on the other side. Tom Dienhart joining us top of the hour. We will get in specifically to Purdue's side of things with Notre Dame. And then, as we talked about, road trip down to Nashville today as well. Tony East going to join us to talk about the Fever. Loaded show. Matt Taylor to round us out 2 o'clock hour. It is Query & Company. When we come back, those 2 injuries for the Colts and what it might mean for them. We'll take a further look into that next. Here's something interesting. Eddie, I would like for you to do an exercise, which I know with your insulation sometimes can be,
Okay.
you have an aversion.
All right. You can produce your own show now.
No, I'm just saying. I didn't mean. What I'm saying is, I'm not asking.
Take yourself out of that hole, Jake. Come on.
I'm not asking you to do calisthenics or any such thing, right? If you were to look at the Colts depth chart,
Okay.
and go and look at it offensively, like if you go to Colts.com and you get on their depth chart that they have listed on their website.
Yep.
The key word there probably is depth, because it's something that, I recall when we had Chris Ballard on when I was doing the morning show. And I remember asking him, that was during the time when he was giving, to quote Ted Lasso, a lot of guff to Kevin about the wide receiver and Kevin's insistence on the Colts addressing the wide receiver position.
Yep.
And I asked Chris Ballard the question of what is, in terms of building a roster, what's the one bugaboo that, like, you just can't wrap your head around and you just can't grasp what it is that, how you go about something. And I remember perfectly he said, probably depth. The hardest thing in the NFL is finding and building depth. Like, for example, when you have an ankle problem, you have depth because you have, again, I mean, here's a medical journal.
Okay.
A medical, from real doctors.
Okay.
Some experts argue that we actually have 4 ankles. The reason for this debate lies in the structure of our ankles. As mentioned earlier, the ankle joint is made up of 3 bones. However, some experts argue that the fibula should be considered a separate joint. Again, 4 ankles. Eddie, this is the kind of stuff that you have the access to, this sort of expertise.
No.
Medical experts agree with me.
No.
But if you go to their offensive depth chart and you look at it right now, what area would you say they have the most depth? What position would you say they have done a nice job of giving themselves the most depth?
Wide receiver?
That's probably correct. And the reason I bring that up is because Josh Downs, who is one of their – he's obviously – you don't think of Josh Downs as being a – gosh, he would be maybe their second most important receiver. I think Pittman is still the guy that is because he's such a big target. But with Josh Downs potentially missing, and I don't know that he's going to miss play on Sunday, but if you're not practicing on Wednesday because of an ankle, we'll see what that means for today. And we'll talk to Matt Taylor coming up about 2:30. But I do like the depth they have there because I think a really important piece for them, and a guy that's been a really important piece, if I had to go out and buy a Colts jersey to wear to a game, if I had to buy a Pacers jersey of a player to wear to a game, I think most people know the guy for the Pacers that I love is Aaron Nesmith, because Aaron Nesmith does whatever it is that is needed. He doesn't need necessarily design plays to get his points. He can capture lightning in a bottle like he did in the Garden and steal a game from New York by hitting 17 three-pointers in 42 seconds. But I love Aaron Nesmith because I like that kind of selflessness. If you look at the Colts depth chart and Josh Downs is not available, for example, do you know who is the Aaron Nesmith for the Colts?
Ashton Dulin.
Correct. Ashton Dulin can play a number of different areas. He doesn't have to have, consistent, regular plays designed to him to make an impact. There are always, every year, there's a game or two that is like an Ashton Dulin game where you look back at it and you go, you know what, he made a huge play that was a difference in that game, that kept a drive alive that they needed or got them a score, whatever it might be. Had a big return. Ashton Dulin is literally the guy that's like, wherever you need me to go. And Ashton Dulin probably becomes, again, a valuable Aaron Nesmith if Josh Downs is not able to go, because everybody kind of has to move up a spot. And I realize that Gould is probably more listed on that side, but I think that you feel pretty good about Ashton Dulin being a guy that you have to plug in. And I give the Colts credit because he's a guy that they have had there and utilized in many different ways, and they have depth in that area. The other area where I think in numerals they have depth, but maybe not stylistically, is tight end. Because Tyler Warren is the one player, if you look at their depth chart, that brings to the table a style or, just what he does that is the hardest to replicate.
Mm-hmm.
Mo Alley Cox is not going to bring you what Tyler Warren does because Tyler Warren is essentially a slot receiver. He's more than just, and he can block. He can do so many different things, and already we've seen it. This is not, there are certain guys that come into a league in football or basketball, either one, and they start out like a house of fire. And it's like, oh my gosh, how did the rest of the league sleep on this guy? And then tape gets out, adjustments are made, earth is brought back down towards, or you are brought back down towards, I should say. And you realize then that everything kind of evened itself out. And everybody knows, Jeremy Lin, there are a million players I could throw out. Everybody listening right now is probably, as I'm describing that, they're thinking of some quarterback or some wide receiver that, think about your fantasy football league, everybody and their brother is immediately going after week one and trying to acquire this guy. It's like, how in the world did nobody think to draft this guy? He had a huge game. And then you find out, that was kind of the anomaly. Tyler Warren does not feel that way. I think Tyler Warren is here and here to stay. And I think this guy is, I think he is going to be an epicenter piece of their offense. If he's not able to go, sure, they have, again, depth at receiver, but not necessarily at tight end. But the thing that's interesting about Warren is, you still have plenty of guys behind it. Mo Alley Cox, Ogletree. Mallory is probably the closest in terms of the style that Warren plays, but Warren can kind of be the style of any of those guys that are filling in. But I just think that he's the hardest to replicate because already through 2 games, and keep in mind, it's 2 games with Daniel Jones as well. Daniel Jones has not played this offense with this personnel in his career, and I think Warren, we talked forever about Pittman or Downs being your safety net guy, and clearly it's Warren. And I know that I've sat here and spent like 40 minutes today talking up Tyler Warren, but I'm telling you, I am that bullish on Tyler Warren. And I still can't believe he was not the first tight end selected in the draft. But as it stands right now, yesterday, Warren didn't practice with the toe. Now, you do have 10 toes. We do know this for a fact, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, why do you sound fatigued by this? I mentioned to you that many medical experts believe that you have 4 ankles and not 2, and and I know you rolled your eyes, but I've got right there before me, I have now medical proof, right?
Okay.
I can present my documents.
I can present my documents as well.
However, this is interesting too. It says in this article that I'm reading, which is from anklespecialist.net.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
The foremost authority of all medical things that you could find.
Uh-huh.
It says in the article, some experts argue that we actually have 4 ankles. If you refresh the article, it edits it to many experts.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Many experts argue that we actually have 4 ankles. The reason for this debate lies in the structure of our ankles. Listen, I took biology, okay?
I took anatomy.
Okay, let me ask you this. In your anatomy class, did you, what's the word that when you, the earthworm, and then later the fetal pig.
Dissect?
Thank you, dissect. Did you dissect those?
Yes. Not a worm, but it was, I can't remember what we did. Fetal pig, though, yes.
Okay. Did you happen to look at the ankles of the fetal pig?
No.
Did you have the plastic structure of the skeleton that hung around?
Yes.
Did you happen to look at the ankles?
No.
Well, you'd have seen 4 of them, according to many experts.
Well, yes, because they have 4 legs. And they have 1 ankle on each leg.
4 legs?
Pigs have 4.
No, I'm talking about the skeleton.
Oh. You were talking about, okay. No.
The
But
human
yes,
skeleton.
I did see the human skeleton, yes. 2 ankles total. 1 on each leg. End of debate.
This, again, I'm going to anklespecialist.net. What is the truth? Do we have 2 or 4 ankles? The answer is both. It all depends on how you define an ankle. If you define an ankle as a joint that allows for movement and stability of your feet, then you have 2. However, those of a higher intellect can understand and grasp the concept that there are actually 4 ankles. This is also interesting here, okay? Intellectspecialist.net. One of the key factors in determining one's intellect is to ask whether or not they believe you have 2 or 4 ankles. It is widely believed amongst the medical community that those that believe there are 4 ankles have a higher intellect than those that are agreeable upon 2. That's from Higher Intellect according to ankles.net. You're not buying into this?
No.
Okay. Big weekend in college football. We will get to that, including why in the world is college football's biggest stage not being brought to Central Indiana. It's a big topic of discussion and debate on the national stage, and certainly for those in Bloomington. We'll get into it next. By the way, pretty good tweet sent. You could also text us at 239-1070. That's 239-1070. That is the text line for the show itself. I think most people know my cell phone number. You can text there as well. But now one person sent a text during our ankle chat that just had like 12 Z's.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand why you would fall asleep during the ankle chat because we're stating the obvious about the fact that, like I said, most experts believe that if you've got 4 ankles, most people know that, right? It seems a little obvious.
No.
But there was, when we were talking about Tyler Warren and the fact that I keep going back to, I can't believe that he was the second tight end selected. This is a good point from Russ. It's too early to tell on the Bears tight end. The fact that he's only had 3 targets on the year isn't all on him. The OC needs to get him more involved. But with that said, Warren is a dog. Yeah, for sure. That's fair. But you just look at Tyler Warren, you go, holy cow. If you're Chicago, you've got to be thinking, what in the world? When you think about college basketball, and the reason I say this is because I think it offers some explanation for a decision in college football. But there are every year in college basketball during March Madness, there are always 1 or 2 teams that get like a top 4 seed. And literally you say to yourself, wait, what? I had no idea. They're like 27-6. I haven't heard about these guys all year, and they're a 3 seed. There are 2 programs that come to mind with that. So I'd like to offer a mental game for the listeners. Eddie, you can participate as well.
Okay.
It is late February.
All right.
It's cold out. It's drizzly.
Super Bowl just ended a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, there's just kind of spitting rain outside. Super Bowl just ended. We're starting to look towards the combine. And college basketball is hitting it's obviously towards the latter part of the season, and we're starting to talk about Selection Sunday.
We're getting around the time of the NBA All-Star break.
That's right. That's exactly right. Surprise snowstorm out of nowhere on a Friday, etc. And we're starting to look towards the NCAA tournament and Selection Sunday, and we're trying to prognosticate whether or not Purdue is going to be a 1 seed. Is Indiana going to get in? Does Butler, how many more wins does Butler need, etc. And you look at the rankings, and you're looking at prognostication. You're looking at prognostication of the top 4 seeds, and there's one team that jumps out, and you're like, hang on. I haven't heard about them all year. They're 27-5. Many people believe they're going to be a top 3 seed. It makes sense. They're good every year, but I just don't really follow or pay attention because we do this every year with them. They're in a Power 5 conference. They, every year, are a top 3 seed, and yet every year they're the team that gets beat in the second round by a 9 seed that comes out with a 500 record out of like the Pac-12. So what team am I talking about each and every year that comes to mind for you from a college basketball program standpoint?
Iowa State.
That is exactly who I was thinking of. Iowa State, who has Tyrese Halliburton, Iowa State, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jamal Tinsley, Iowa State. Marcus Fizer, Iowa State. They've had great players. But Iowa State is exactly Fred Hoiberg. That's exactly who I was thinking of.
George
Iowa
Niang.
State. What's that?
George Niang.
That's right. Who's still in the league, by the way. He has an odd gait.
Yeah. He's got some insulation on him.
But Iowa State is not – they are good every year. But they are not a team that carries with them the oomph of a Kansas or a Kentucky or a Louisville, or for that matter, even a Florida, who's another team in this category, but Florida just won it all. And, like, when Florida wins it all, you're kind of like, oh, okay. And then you're like, a month later, name 3 Florida Gators. I don't know. They were a good team. I think Indiana football, and it's not even comparable because Indiana football has not had the annual sustained success that, say, an Iowa State basketball has. But Iowa State is a very good basketball program that lacks overall sexiness of brand marketing of who they are. And while Indiana a year ago was an unbelievable story, and I think the whole country got captivated by the Kurt Signetti confidence and the swagger and all of that, it doesn't mean that it's translated into a second consecutive year of people buying into Indiana. Because I think there are a lot of people probably from a national standpoint that are like, yeah, it's a little bit like Iowa State. We do this every year with Iowa State. And I think there's still a lot of, you got to prove it to me about Indiana. And it doesn't have the national cachet. That's why I believe College Game Day elected to go against Indiana-Illinois, which is a matchup of two teams ranked in the top 20. And Indiana is, blowing everybody away. And Signetti still has that element of that swagger about himself. But College Game Day, and yes, I think it's still to people is a very big deal as to, where is College Game Day going to be.
And here's the other thing, Jake, that I think that plays into it. I mean, if you're ESPN, your night game on ABC or ESPN or whatever is Miami, Florida. The night game that it's not Indiana, Illinois. Like, I think it would be different if the game was on one of the ESPN properties.
That's fair.
But since it's on NBC,
yeah,
you
why
would be
promote?
you'd be going to
They've done
Bloomington.
that before though, because wasn't it?
It was big noon. They were on Fox last year for the Washington game when they went to Bloomington.
Correct, but ABC didn't air that game, right?
Correct. Yeah.
But Florida, Miami. Here's the other one. Every year, that same scenario that I just presented to you. Give me a team that you automatically assume, or when you're filling out your bracket on March Madness, you put them into the Sweet 16, even though they had a down year and they are 22-11. Because of the branding of the program itself, you're like, yeah, they'll be in the Sweet 16.
Kansas.
Okay. I mean, that's a good one, right? So that's Florida. I mean, I know that Florida, it's been a while since Florida's been good in college football. And there is that narrative of when Florida and Miami or a rivalry like that is relevant, it makes college football better. And Florida's off to a 1-2 start, but it's one of those that's like, you know what? Miami, though, is a top 5 team. They beat Notre Dame. They have a good quarterback, and there is no doubt like a sexiness about Miami, just as there is about Florida within the college football rankings. So I do get from the branding standpoint why that is College Game Day. And in addition to that, to your point, the broadcast aspect of it, a huge factor, although precedent says that is not the end-all, be-all determining factor. But, yes, I think Indiana, and look, I think this Indiana team's really good, just as they were a year ago. I learned a year ago not to sleep on Indiana, not to doubt Indiana. And because they get leads, and then when they get leads, it's just like, oh, my gosh, they just do not make mistakes to relinquish leads unless they're playing Notre Dame, I guess, in the playoff. But this one against Illinois, Illinois, Brett Bielema's group, you heard Don Fisher talking about it yesterday. I mean, they are big in the trenches. They can control the line. Illinois can keep the ball probably out of Indiana's hands offensively, and it'll be fun to see. Now, Purdue and Notre Dame, the other one that is big this weekend. Tom Dienhart going to join us. Other side, we'll preview it from what the Boilers have to say and take a look at where Notre Dame might be susceptible for Purdue to take advantage. All that next. So Saturday at 3:30, Purdue and Notre Dame, and the Boilers coming in. This is, I think I have mentioned before, years ago, I still have a Purdue hat that I bought in the Dallas airport. I don't remember. I must have been going down to cover a Colts game somewhere and had a layover in the Dallas airport. I don't remember for what reason I was in the Dallas airport, but I was in, I had a long layover or whatever, and I was in a little bar or restaurant filled with Notre Dame fans. And Notre Dame was getting ready to play Purdue, and I had no real rooting interest, but these Notre Dame fans were so loud, I just thought it'd be fun. So I went right across the terminal to the hat store in there and bought a Purdue hat and came in and sat down. And the second that I sat down, Taylor Stubblefield had a 99-yard or whatever it was touchdown where he was doing the boiler up all the way down the sidelines, and it was pretty awesome. And I've always enjoyed this rivalry as a result, and certainly appreciate the time from Tom Dienhart from Golden Black, who's going to join us now to preview exactly that. And Tom, I'm going to begin with a simple but loaded question. Are you ready?
You got it. Fire away, Jake.
Is Purdue good?
Don't know. Incomplete. Need more information, I guess. I think we're getting more is being revealed. I wish I could give you a more definitive yes or a no. Last week was a measuring stick game in a lot of ways, Jake, going against USC. Purdue covered. I think they acquitted themselves in a lot of different areas, but they obviously came up short, which was a surprise. So they're certainly better than they were last year. I think there's more optimism. I have more optimism, I think. Looking around the Big Ten too, Jake. Maybe this team can win 5 games and possibly squeeze out a 6. We'll have to wait and see. I just don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Tom, and you tell me if you agree with this. I think one of the things that makes that question, and that's why I said it's a simple question, but a kind of loaded one, right, is, and this is insane to say, but I don't know if we know yet how good USC is. I mean, I think we know that USC obviously has talent, right? But Purdue was a couple of self-inflictions away from being right there in that game, and so that gives you optimism. But then I guess there's that other half. Do you agree with the fact of we just kind of don't know the USC side of it as well?
Yeah, we're sitting here critiquing a loss, trying to figure out how good the loss was, right? And you mentioned the 3 red zone interceptions. Obviously, so crucial, so key, so killer for Purdue. And like you said, Jake, had those gone in differently, Purdue gotten points in each of those drives, each of those red zone picks. I mean, you're talking about a totally different game. And you're right. How good is USC? We really don't know either. They didn't play anybody before they got to West Lafayette. I do think their offense is awfully talented. I like their quarterback, Jaden Maeve, and those 2 receivers. But we'll have to wait and see. Now comes Notre Dame, right? I mean, you talk about a sense of urgency. Having your back shoved against the wall in mid-September, that's Notre Dame. There's absolutely zero wiggle room left for the Irish to lose a game. They've got to beat Purdue on Saturday, and there's some self-doubt. There's some tumult up there, Jake, on defense. Is Marcus Freeman going to get more involved calling it? Will Chris Ash still call it? So they've got some things to figure out up there in South Bend too.
Well, and I think if you look, Tom, if you are Purdue, and I don't know how much, because it is so early in the year, you still have a little bit of game plan of just like, hey, we're going to do what we do and not maybe try to buy into what is a definitive weakness of an opponent. But to your point, Notre Dame, at the very least, it does look like, certainly from the secondary standpoint, they could be susceptible to big plays. And I do think that Purdue has that capability at the quarterbacking play. Is that a fair assessment?
I think so. Ryan Brown, like you said, 300 yards passing in the opener, 300 yards passing last week. He can throw the ball downfield, Jake. He does have that big play ability in the vertical pass game. The Boilers do have some playmakers on the edge. Michael Jackson, Nigel Tuggle in particular, Ahmad Branch. So, yeah, I think Purdue's got to try to punch him in the nose early. Get the ball if you can. Take the kickoff. Try to go downfield. Take your shots downfield. There's doubt in that ND secondary. Try to create more doubt. And for a unit that has to be lacking confidence at this point, if you can hit them early, create some self-doubt, and get them on the heels, then maybe this game is really up for grabs in the second half.
When you look at Purdue through 3 games, and I know Ball State, Southern Illinois, and then that USC game. And to your point, Tom, I think we're still trying to figure out exactly who Purdue is. But let's go back to something that I've asked you before, but we now have more evidence before us, and that is Barry Odom and just overall what he brings as a coach. What feels or looks differently, other than the record, for Purdue now than it did a calendar year ago?
I just think the way they play with discipline, and look at the penalties. I think they're averaging 3.3 penalties per game, which is, I want to say, the fifth fewest in the Big Ten. Playing smart football, I think those are things that really stand out. Not beating yourself. And I'll tell you what, another thing that stands out, Jake, is the ability to deal with adversity, right? We saw it in the Southern Illinois game when SIU came down the first two times they had the ball and scored touchdowns. It was 14-14. You go, my gosh, you're going to be in a shootout with an FCS school. That was some adversity there for the defense, and they responded and only gave up a field goal the rest of the way. So, again, just playing smarter football, playing disciplined football, and the ability to handle adversity and respond to adversity are three big ways I think this program is different than last year.
In what way, or what do you think, I should say, is keeping Barry Odom awake at night? Like, what is the area so far that you look at and say, I just get the feeling that Purdue has not been able to put their exact thumbprint on why this isn't going better?
I think his trench play on both sides of the ball. The offensive line's really been a little spotty, a little shaky, especially when it comes to pass protection, Jake. They're giving up a lot of sacks, a lot of pressures. They cannot get Ryan Brown hurt. And defensively, the inability of the ends to really get a rush up the field. And this hasn't been there. They usually had to blitz to get pressure. So football is won in the trenches. We all know that from Papa Warner to the NFL. And those are two areas I think, if I'm Barry Odom, maybe I'm tossing a turn a little bit at night.
Purdue, in terms of their football, Tom Dienhart is our guest from Gold and Black. I know the bucket game is, when I ask this question, you're going to think I'm a moron here. You ready? I know the bucket game is the biggest game on the schedule. I know how big that is. Am I wrong, though, in saying, I mean, I did not go to Purdue, but a ton of my friends did, that as much as Purdue does not like Indiana, that from a football standpoint, if you were to ask them the one game that they would most want to get, the bucket would be number one, but I feel like the Notre Dame game is closer than people think as rivaling that. Am I off base?
No, you're not off base at all. They have a trophy game with Illinois, the Cannon, but there's not that much juice between those two schools. But you're right, Notre Dame, Purdue, from 1946 to 2014, of course, they played every year. It was a big deal, and they renewed the series here of late. And let's be honest, it's a school, if you're Purdue, you're kind of envious of because of all the success and all the attention Notre Dame gets, right? And it's an in-state school. And the ultimate fan that really irks Purdue fan is the Indiana basketball / New Orleans football fan. They call them the reversible jacket crowd.
Yep. Listen, I grew up with a ton of them, right?
So there it is, right in your own state, your second fiddle in Notre Dame in football. Usually over the years having second fiddle IU in basketball. So what I'm trying to say here, even as a Purdue guy, I'm going to speak for everybody, and there's always a sense of a little bit of inferiority, I think. And you're always kind of looking up, striving for more. Hey, look at us. Don't ignore us. So anytime you get a chance to beat the Irish in football or IU in basketball, it's always very special. Or even IU in anything for that matter, but Notre Dame in football in particular. So, yeah, I think this Notre Dame series is every bit as important just behind that old Oaken Bucket series.
Tom, when you look at, the Purdue football program is one that obviously in the times, certainly in the era in which Gold and Black has been the foremost leader in covering them, you've seen different coaching administrations, right? I mean, everything from, obviously, you go with Tiller, but then between Danny Hope and Darrell Hazel and, Jeff Brom, who had a lot of success there, and then Ryan Walters and now into Barry Odom. How has do you find that access or approach changes from one coach to the next, or is it a program where the program itself kind of sells itself and then the coach, it just, there's not a lot of variation of approach based on who the coach is in terms of the treatment of media and the overall vibe, if that makes sense?
I think every guy brings his own treatment of the media and his overall just program, if you will, as far as football goes. I mean, Barry Odom's talked about he's basically following Gary Pinkel's plan. Gary Pinkel was one of his mentors. He's one of his biggest mentors, the guy who gave him his first job at Missouri. And I think he's told us that he follows that same blueprint in about every aspect. So he's got that. And as far as the media goes, he's been pretty accessible. He let us watch every practice in the spring and through training camp, and we get to watch the Monday practice as well, and been plenty of media availability. So I think he gets it. I always think it's kind of good to try to curry some favor and be accessible to the media. Because times are going to be tough. We all know there's always going to be good times and bad times, but they're coming. And he just comes off as a regular guy. I think he gets it. And he knows how to send a message to the media as well. So, it's still in the honeymoon phase. Things are great. Everybody's happy. Everything's hunky-dory. And that can continue this week, obviously, if they can stay with the Irish and try to make a game out of it.
It's interesting, Thomas. You look at the schedule, and I know that the reality is this. A college football team is made up of, wait for it, college kids, right? And sometimes college kids maybe, from an athletic standpoint, they don't have, I'm going to say maturity is the wrong word, but the focus that, say, you get at the professional level, right? And I think they probably are prone to look past or look at things or buy into things more so than a pro team. And when you look at Purdue's schedule, you've got Notre Dame, and then right after that, you've got Illinois, who we know that Illinois is, expected to have a very big year. It gets pretty manageable after that. Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers, even Michigan are the next four after that. Do you think that there is, to an extent, an importance for Purdue, and this sounds like I'm selling them short, but to simply not have a repeat of last year's Notre Dame performance and disparity in order to just kind of get through without open, terrible wounds of these two games to then see where the season falls for you? I don't think the roster, I'm hoping they don't look at it that way, but is there some element of that, of, look, get through these 2 weeks, see where the chips fall, and then things can kind of open up for you a little bit? Is there a danger in seeing it that way?
I don't think so. The coaches aren't seeing that. The players, obviously. They always think everybody's nameless and faceless from week to week. But you're right. They have to erase the debacle of last year's 66-7 defeat at the hands of the Irish. We've talked about that. Just keep it close. Try to cover like they did last week. And who knows, Jake, this is where Purdue made its nickname the Spoilermakers over the years by having huge upsets against Notre Dame as a heavy underdog. And Purdue's in that exact scenario this weekend. Not saying it's going to happen, but this is how the storyline's set up often for Purdue against Notre Dame, and they pulled off crazy upsets. But, even if they obviously get beat, again, you don't want to get trampled like it happened last year. And you talked about October in particular, Jake. After this week, they've got a bye week. Catch your breath, 4 games in the book, assess yourself, reset. Here's October. You talked about at Minnesota, at Northwestern. Then they play Rutgers for a homecoming. And those are non-negotiable games you got to win if you're Purdue, if you want to even dream of going to a bowl, right? And then things get really interesting. You mentioned Michigan, Paul Task, and Ann Arbor, but how good is Washington? They have to go out there later this year as well. And who knows, how crazy would it be, Jake, if they're 5-6? And here comes Indiana for the old Oakham Bucket game on Black Friday in November, and Purdue somehow knocks them off to get bowl eligibility. If something like that happened, they probably built a statue for Barry Odom already. But,
it's funny. I mean, a year ago, you mentioned like building the statue of Barry Odom. A year ago, this game with Notre Dame, that was the beginning of the end, wasn't it? I mean, I know that sounds, but like they were beaten so bad in that game that it felt like right then, the Ryan Walters era, it was over. Am I wrong?
No, you're exactly right. I think the line for that game got all the way down to about 7.5 or 8. Because remember, Notre Dame's coming off a home loss in Northern Illinois. Purdue's coming off a 49-0 win. So there was a lot of people drinking the Purdue Kool-Aid, and the wheels came off in 30 minutes. That game was over at halftime. I think it was 42-0, and that was the beginning of the end. An epic beatdown, the worst loss in school history, Jake, until, of course, the finale in Bloomington, where they even got worse. You didn't think that was possible, but it got worse with a 66-0 loss to the Hoosiers.
Tom, what else is coming up on Gold and Black in terms of, obviously I know this is the epicenter of your guys' coverage, but what else are you guys working on?
Well, we got, I think today the Big Ten basketball schedules are getting released, so we'll have analysis of that up there. We'll see what the Boilermakers basketball schedule and the conference looks like. And we have our Boilermaker radio coming up with Derek Schultz, someone you're familiar with, who does a great job for us as well. But yeah, just a continuing football coverage. And, of course, like I mentioned, basketball as well. I know Brian Newbert's already doing some previews of players individually in practice. They'll be starting pretty soon over on Northwestern Avenue, Jake. So a lot going on, and just an exciting time of the year for all sports fans.
Hey, Tom, I'm not going to lie to you. It still looks weird to me when the Big Ten basketball schedule comes out and I see UCLA and Oregon and Washington on there. You know what I mean? USC, for that matter. I mean, you're like, what in the world? It's cool, but it's still, I'm not used to it yet, but it'll take some time, right?
Yeah, I agree. I finally gotten used to Rutgers and Maryland. It's only taken 10 years.
I'm also not used to hearing people say Derek Schultz does a great job. So, there's adjustments all over the place, right? I mean,
well, he pays me to say good things about it.
I understand. Tom, I appreciate it, man.
All right, be good, Jake. Take care.
All right, Tom Dienhart joining us on the program again. Purdue Notre Dame coming up 3:30 on Saturday. Eddie, have you been to either Ross-Ade Stadium or Notre Dame Stadium?
Nope.
Open disclaimer. I grew up and I couldn't stand Notre Dame. And I know that when I say that, Notre Dame fans get like so angry when they hear you say that. And I'm like, guys, you have to understand, part of your program, part of the mystique, part of the allure, part of the brand of Notre Dame is the fact that you either love them or hate them. There's no in between. And that's actually the ultimate compliment. Wouldn't you rather be a program that has that sort of polarization than a program that people go, yeah, they're fine? Rutgers.
Yeah.
Anybody that's like, I can't stand Rutgers. Yeah, they're fine. They're just there. Minnesota. Minnesota's the crown jewel of this. If you see somebody wearing a T-shirt that says Minnesota on it, you're like, well, that guy's clearly from Minnesota. Because nobody just goes out. You don't meet anybody from Fayetteville that's like, yeah, I'm a huge Minnesota fan. You don't walk through the streets of Vegas and some guy walks up wearing a Golden Gopher hat and, you're like, oh, so Twin Cities? Now Savannah. Why are you wearing them? Just a big fan? But Notre Dame is one of those programs that you either love it or hate it. And I didn't like them. I didn't like Purdue either because I was an Indiana fan when I was a little kid. But nonetheless, I remember in middle school taking a field trip to Notre Dame, and it was in the non-football season. It was in the summertime, and even then, I'm like, I just I didn't even like Digger Phelps, none of it. And then, as a professional, the first time that I was able to go to a football game at Notre Dame, I was working at Channel 6, and the game was on ABC, and so I went up to cover the famous or infamous, depending on which way you look at it, the Reggie Bush, the original tush-push game.
Yeah.
And one of the things that jumps out at me about that game was afterwards interviewing Matt Leinart and thinking to myself, like, man, this dude, like, it's kind of like a space cadet. And then later we found out he had been concussed in that game. And I'm like, man, that makes perfect sense. But my point for Notre Dame fans is this, and for Purdue fans and Indiana fans, whatever else. I grew up, when I say I didn't like Notre Dame, I mean like I would get like nervous energy about how much I disliked Notre Dame. And when I went to that game, and then afterwards I was accosted by a 74-pound liver spot and a sweatshirt that said God Country Notre Dame, who put his finger, he was like 90 years old, but put his finger into my chest and thought I was with USC. Said, all I got to say is UCLA is going to kick your tail next week. And I'm like, I'm just here covering the game. But when I left that day, I got it. When I went up there and I saw, and it was the simplicity of it. It was the simplicity of the fact that it was just a stadium, a grass field, the lines on it, and gold helmets. And there was an understated nature of the fact that when you are an illustrious program that is one of the most, if not the most historic programs in all of college football, you don't need a bunch of bells and whistles. You don't need a bunch of glitz and glamour. You have the number one thing on your side, which is heritage. And when I went, and I knew that, obviously, but when I went up to the stadium there and witnessed it and saw all of it before me, it was impossible to leave and not have the highest amount of respect for Notre Dame and for that program. And as I have become an adult, I've become more objective in terms of not having fan bias for the most part in things. And one of the things that I've said in that, there still is that part of me that little kid in me comes out where I don't like Notre Dame per se. But one of the things I've said about Marcus Freeman, if you are still a Notre Dame hater, and there are plenty of them out there, the most unlikable thing about Marcus Freeman is how likable he is. You want to root for the guy. I mean, just seems like a super cool dude, nice-looking guy, nice young family, looks like a guy that you would want to play for, looks like a guy that you would totally be comfortable sending your kids to play for. Team plays hard. And, yeah, I know that they've gotten off to the 0-2 start that's a little bit surprising, but I think most people still believe they're one of the better teams in the country. And from Purdue's standpoint, even though this game's at Notre Dame, but from Purdue's standpoint, kind of the same is true. When I started covering games at night in Ross-Ade, there's just something cool about the night games up in West Lafayette and kind of the chill in the air and all that. I've grown to really like both programs. Having said all that, I think it'd be cool if Purdue wins because I just think it'd be good for Barry Odom but Notre Dame, Tom's right, Notre Dame's got to get it done, no question. Speaking of getting it done, the Fever have to do exactly that tonight or else the season's over. Tony East has been covering them all season long and will be doing so again tonight. We will talk to him about what we might be able to expect in Georgia, and we'll do it next. It's a great tune. It's a great tune. It is not the Devil down in Georgia, but the Fever are. They take on the Atlanta Dream tonight. Eddie Garrison will have the pregame on this radio station. That begins, Eddie, at
7:15.
That is correct. With
quarter after
7:30. And then the question becomes, when you are doing the postgame show, will you be talking about a continuation of the Fever season, or will we begin recapping the season? Because it is tonight a win or come back home and then stay there for the Indiana Fever. Best of three, and it is game 3 down in Atlanta. Tony East joining us now to talk about that. Tony, I'll begin with this. What was different other than the fact, the obvious, which was the score, but what did the Fever do in game number 2 where they really controlled the vast majority of that game that had eluded them in game number 1?
It's kind of a simple thing, but still very significant. It was their point of attack defense, right? Kelsey Mitchell, after game 1, said that was one of the biggest things she felt like was an issue. The Dream players were getting wherever they wanted, able to set up whatever action they wanted into the paint. And while the Fever defense was okay in game 1, they couldn't stop enough, as my cat yells at me, I'm sure you'll love to hear.
Now, is that Pepper 2? What's the name of the kitty?
This is Winston. He is now 8 months old.
Okay.
So in game 2, they were just way better doing that, right? Alicia Gray couldn't get into the lane. She was 4 for 19 or something. Jordan Canada struggled. Ryan Howard struggled. They were missing free throws. Everything was going wrong for Atlanta. That was huge. That changed their whole fortune defensively in the game. And for a team that's supposed to be so good at shooting, the Dream couldn't make anything. And so, Carl Smesko, Atlanta's head coach after the game, said, their defense was way more aggressive. We did not respond well to that. And I thought that was the story of the difference of the game and why the Fever were so much better.
I would like to know, by the way, musician, world leader, former Anderson, Indiana guard, cigarettes. I'd like to know Winston's name for who?
I think my wife just thought it was cute. If we had to actually pick a person, it's the character from New Girl. I don't know if you ever watched that show.
I've not seen that. I kind of like the cigarettes. I like the thought of the cat smoking cigarettes because it's Winston.
I don't call him Winston. I just call him Squeaks. So that one's pretty easy to follow. His meow was very high-pitched.
Fair enough. All right. I thought it was – Tony, when I looked at – if you were to just look at the box score, you would say to yourself, okay, the Fever shot the ball better in game 2 than they did game 1. What's that?
Much better, yep.
Okay. So the question is that sometimes shooters just need to get in rhythm. And then other times they do things differently to set up shots to get themselves better looks. And they come up with wrinkles to get better looks. Was it just simply a matter of there just wasn't touch in game 1, or did they make wrinkles in the way that they were distributing to get open looks?
Some of both. I mean, game 1 was their worst shooting performance of the whole season, right? That is clearly anomaly levels of bad. Not that Atlanta's defense isn't good, but they made 2 threes the whole game, right? They were dreadful with the jumpers that night, and that was it. And so, yes, they were generating better looks in game 2, and some of that is all season. They've told us in media sessions, and they've been right to do so. Our defense leads to our offense. If our defense is good, we'll score better. When their defense was good in game 2, they turned that into, a ton of transition chances, open threes, quick in the shot clock, whatever that was. So I think it was 2 things from these games to games, and this is what the Dream will kind of hang their hat on, honestly, is that they shot so bad in game 1 that they were naturally going to be a little better in game 2, but they focused so much on better defense, and it led to better offense for them. Kelsey Mitchell made as many threes in just the first quarter of game 2 that the whole Fever team did in game 1, right? That was such a big shift in their fortunes, and I think they did a good job of actually working the ball around to get those shots. That Lexi Hall 3 was perfection to close the third quarter, but it came in part because of just natural statistical progression and better defense, I thought.
Tony, when you look at the situation the Fever are in, Tony East is our guest, and when you look over the course of the season, they have been so decimated by injury, and I think there was a lot of thought from people of, whether or not they would even get into the play. Here they are, right? I mean, there was certainly there was doubt. They kind of backpedaled their way into the playoffs itself. But Have you been impressed by their ability to kind of plug in different players and still maintain at the level they have? Or does that strictly speak to the fact that this is a league that does not have the number of teams that the NBA does, and thus you have plenty of available free agent players that are indeed capable starters right from the get-go? Is it credit Indiana the way they went about doing it, or is it credit just to the league itself that there is that level of talent that's out there?
I think it's some of both because, yeah, on one hand, it's very easy to say, they get Chloe Bibby and Ari McDonald midseason and they're both great. And go, well, look at that. The league's too small. They're expanding, and these expansion teams will be good, and there's a lot of good free agents. Like, Golden State just made the playoffs as an expansion team, right? Like, that does show what is possible with just players who are not on rosters. So in some ways it is the talent, but it's not just that, because both of those players were on different teams this season, right? Aaron McDonald was in LA for training camp. Chloe Bibby was on the Valkyries earlier this season. Odyssey Sims was on the Sparks earlier this season. Ariel Powers on Golden State this season. Like, all their players that they've had on hardship deals were on different teams at a different point in the season, Bree Hall too, and all of them, basically all of them, I would say, are playing better for the Fever than their first team. For whatever reason that is, volume, situation, comfortability, whatever. And I think that is a testament to what their coaching staff and style is able to do, is they're able to get players up to speed very quickly. Now, honestly, some of that is that they've had a ton of reps doing it, right? They're so used to it now on what that process should look like, how they get the player the playbook, keep it simple and all that. But I think they have done better than other teams, even as we've seen with players that they've had this year, at getting those players up to speed and making them look effective and helpful. Like, they're playing 4 players right now who weren't even on their team to start, 3 or 4 players who weren't on their team to start the season, real playoff rotation minutes, and none of them look bad. They're certainly all being helpful in some way. So I think that's been a huge part of their season, is their ability to do that. And says a lot about, like, the build that they've had, because last year when players came in and out, or even before last year, they were just totally dead on arrival. So that is a big part of their franchise growth.
Have you been, I'll use the term surprised for lack of a better word, but what is, I guess, the better way of saying it, your assessment been of the fact that I personally thought, Tony, and feel free to tell me that this is my own ignorance, when she first entered the league, I was under the assumption or just expectation that Aaliyah Boston was going to be an offensive centerpiece and that plays and offense were going to run through her because she had been such a dominant college player. But perhaps I was naive to just the style of play in the W and kind of the open style that it works with. Have you been surprised at all that she has not been a, look, the ball has to go through her on every possession level offensive player?
Yeah, it's really interesting. 2 things. One is, out of college, I think actually her biggest selling point as a prospect was her defense. She was like probably the best defensive player in the country her last year at South Carolina, and obviously was a good offensive player too. But the fact that she was a two-way player made her so valuable and such an obvious number 1 pick. But I think what you're asking has honestly been like a big story of the season. Stephanie White, all the time when they were going in and out of point guards and everybody's hurt and they don't know what to do, was like, we got to play through Aaliyah more. We've got to figure out how to do that. And so some of it is, like, I think execution. Like, they want to use her as a fulcrum at the top of the key or as a threat at the elbow more often. And for some reason, whether that's because they've had a turnstile of point guards, whether that's just poor execution, whether that's something else, hasn't happened. Maybe that's on Aaliyah for not demanding the ball more. I would not call that her personality or anything like that. So perhaps that's a part of it. But, yeah, I think they do need to do that more. She is, outside of Kelsey Mitchell, their most potent offensive player, certainly, and is really talented. And getting her involved has helped them. She was much better in Game 2 than Game 1. In Game 1, she was great at the start, and the Fever were winning, and then that kind of faded away. But the other part of this is the difference between the college game. I got lucky that I interviewed Aaliyah the first day she came to Indy after the draft, and we happened to do the interview on the Fever court, and while we were talking, she kept looking down, and I couldn't figure out why. And it's because she was looking at the paint, and she was like, the paint is this wide, like in the pros, this is how big it is. Like, you catch farther from the basket, there's 3 in the key, there's all this different stuff that changes your game and how impactful you can be. And I think that is changed how she's had to impact the game and what she's done in a way that made her not quite the same player she was in college.
Tony East is our guest, at Tony R. East on the X Post Twitter, and, of course, Locked On Pacers, Forbes as well, where you can see and hear his work. Tony, before we let you go, obviously, before we know it, it's going to be here, which is hard to believe, and that is just the Pacers season. And I still keep going back to, in my mind, the Halliburton injury, and it's like I almost forget that, oh, gosh, that's right, he's not going to be there this year, and then Miles Turner. But let's begin with Halliburton just in terms of what you hear or see. Everything seems to be that he is on timeline or maybe even ahead of it, but will not play this year, obviously. But what do you hear in aspect of that in terms of there have been no setbacks, et cetera, correct?
Yep, nothing yet out of the boot. Sometimes, I think now maybe always, he told us it would be about this time. Shooting free throws on his Instagram story. I think that was a shoe promo and not actually him being healthy, but good for him shooting some free throws, moving around. So, yeah, certainly on the path. I think we're going to see a lot of Tyrese Halliburton arm stuff, shooting standstill jumpers, dribbling a ball, but not moving hardly at all. But, yes, believe completely on track to this point.
The other guy that I'm curious about, and you tell me, do you believe that over the course of a season, Andrew Dienhart is a really good player. I mean, we know that. And Dienhart has had moments and flashes when Halliburton has been unavailable or where they need that level of backcourt scoring. Dienhart has been able to rise to those occasions. Do you believe he can sustain that over the course of a season when now all of a sudden he is a microscope guy from the other team's defense?
And required to be good, right? Like if the Pacers are going to be good, Dienhart has to be a good player. Yeah, I've had a lot of trouble answering that question truly because – I mean, you were there at these games. Like game 3 and 4 of the conference finals 2 years ago, he was unguardable, right? The best defense in the league, Boston, was like, we can't stop this guy, right? And he's had many games like that throughout his career here and there. The legendary Golden State game where he just destroyed Steph Curry. Great playoff games all the time. But that's the thing. They're legendary because they're like not frequent or like not consistently what he does. And that's what this season needs to be about is he has to be like – all the time a good point guard, creating shots for others, able to get in the lane, keep the ball moving, stuff like that. We know he can do it. He did it at Gonzaga. He's done it at times before, but not with any sort of like consistency or, okay, this is clearly a lead creator for a really good team level. That's one of the biggest stories of the season is can he do it? How much frequency can he do it with? What's the right volume? How does he keep other guys involved? Because the flashes are crazy, right? The flashes are like, oh, perfect. Like they're going to be just fine and they could make the playoffs or playing again or whatever, but they're just that. They're flashes. And I know the team believes that he can do it. I know he believes he can do it, but can he? And that could be a huge question. And how much do they have to change their system, if at all, to make it possible? Because that's the other part of this. They play so fast, move the ball so much because of Halliburton. They don't have him this year. How much are they going to be willing to change things to make other guys better when it might not matter that much in a year from now?
Tony, do you think, considering that this year – again, it's just this weird year. It's probably the easiest way to say it, right? This gap year, if
weird
you will.
Is perfect.
But
I hate that term, but yes, that is correct.
I know. I can't weird. We'll just say weird. It's going to be a weird year.
You know what I heard somebody said that you would love? Because specifically it's Halliburton who's out for the year, they should call it a leap year. I thought that was pretty good.
Boy, that's solid. For those that don't know, Tyrese Halliburton born on leap year. That's pretty solid, right?
I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, although he can't leap. That's the only problem there, right?
Like it all.
You know what I mean? Right. You know what I mean? So it's the non-leap year, basically. But so here's the thing, though. When you look at between Huff, Wiseman, and Isaiah Jackson, and I do love Isaiah Jackson, but he's also coming off the Achilles, so there's a big question mark there. Do you believe that this year is about grooming and auditioning those three to find out which one is your long-term answer there, or are they simply rotating through, filling and warming that seat until they go out next year through free agency and get the Miles Turner replacement?
I think they would hope that one of those guys is the answer. And I think they clearly believe in their, ability to heal these Achilles injuries because they re-signed 2 of them or both of them, right? And it'll help them learn more about the process for Tyrese. But, yeah, I think they got to hope it's one of them, right? Because it's really hard for them to functionally get like a high-paid, good starting center right now. They could trade for a guy in a rookie skill deal and pay him more later. So figuring out their center situation is really interesting. And I think that Isaiah Jackson's quite good, but who knows what he's going to be like post-Achilles. Like his whole thing is athleticism. Is he going to have the same level? Huff looked good last year. He's played 95 total NBA games. The Pacers played more than that last year in total between the playoffs, right? Like we have no idea how good these guys are going to be. And so that's, I think, their hope. But I think you're right that maybe like not stopgap replacement, but it is like a fill in. Like hopefully it's one of these guys. We'll see before they have to really figure it out when Halliburton's back as they try to compete again.
Okay, 7:30 tonight. It is the Fever and the Atlanta Dream down in Atlanta. Tony East, appreciate the time, and who knows, man? Maybe we'll be talking to you again about another round for the Fever, depending on what happens tonight. But appreciate the time.
There's a chance we find out tonight that they're hosting the second round, Jake. Could be crazy.
I did see somebody. Yeah, they were talking about that, right? It all depends on what happens between Las Vegas and Seattle, but we will keep our eye on it. Tony, appreciate it. I mentioned earlier we were talking about Purdue and Notre Dame, and last year what a disaster that was. Eddie, think about this and tell me on the other side. I want to know the sporting event that you went to with the most anticipation and excitement that turned out to be the biggest dud, and like 5 minutes into it, you were just thinking to yourself, this was the worst decision of all time. Think about that. Let me know on the other side. before you tell me about a time when you went to an away game and it was a total disaster and all of the buildup and excitement and anticipation, and then you were like, why in the world did I put myself through this? If you could, please, the breaking news sounder. This just in from West 56. Both Tyler Warren, who has a toe issue, and Josh Downs, who has one of his 4 ankles issue. That's a reference to something said earlier in the show. Both are practicing today. Both missed practice yesterday. Both are back on the practice field today. Matt Taylor, voice of the Colts, coming up just about 36 minutes from now. Is there a game that comes to mind for you, Eddie? I mention it only because with Purdue and Notre Dame playing this weekend, there was so much excitement, so much anticipation a year ago for Purdue going into that game against Notre Dame, and I believe that was a home game still, but nonetheless, like, you go to it and then you sit there and you're like, oh my gosh, nightmare. Have you had a game like that you attended?
I'm trying to remember what year this was. It was the year the Colts played on Thanksgiving against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay.
That game.
So you were super stoked, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go to the game, and you just want to crawl away, right?
Yes.
There are I would imagine, I mean, obviously the Colts Steelers game and the Nick Harper, Ben Roethlisberger trip up wide right field goal would be one that comes to mind for a lot of people, I'm sure. You know, I think I mentioned, like, we were just talking about this last week. Shannon went to Game 7.
Yep.
In Oklahoma City, and you know, you can imagine, like, there was so, and I mean, it goes without saying, I mean, we all know what happened, but she just, you know, to have to sit there and watch the rest of that game knowing, and they were up at the half, right? But once it got away pretty heavily. That would be pretty rough. There was one game where I drove from Indy to Raleigh, North Carolina, on a whim. I'm just going to go see, at that time, Sammy Watkins, I think, was a freshman for Clemson. Clemson was like 6 or 7-0, and they were ranked in the BCS back when they did it that way. And they played at North Carolina State, and I bought a ticket out in front of the stadium. I got there a little bit late. It was like a 3:00 start maybe, and I got a little bit late. I got there late because I was kind of sightseeing around and took longer to get in than I thought. And I walked in. It was literally 7 minutes into the game, and they were down 27-3. And I was wearing big Clemson sweatshirt. And, I mean, you know, you're sitting there, what in the world am I doing? Now I've got a 600-mile drive home. Brutal.
No, I will say, Jake, that was the game that Scott Tolzien was starting for Andrew Luck. And the highlight of that game was the 35-yard pass from Pat McAfee to Dwayne Allen on 4th down on the fake punt.
I remember Scott Tolzien, man. I mean, dig that one up from the archives. Scott Tolzien, right?
Yeah. Can you name the Colts' leading rusher in that game?
Boy, my years all run together, and so I'm probably going to embarrass myself.
That was 2016.
Boom Heron.
No.
Am I close?
No.
Give me the university of said player.
The University of Connecticut.
Donald Brown.
No.
Okay.
Damn it, Donald.
Donald Brown would have been well before that, I realize.
I don't think you'll ever guess him.
Do I get some credit for the Boom Heron call?
You get some there.
Did you see Vic Ballard, by the way, is now like an electrical engineer?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, hit me.
Jordan Todman.
Boy. If you would have locked me in a room with that question and I couldn't come out until I got it right, you'd have found a skeleton in 2 years.
Yeah, I remember watching Antonio Brown catch 3 touchdown passes. Like, well, at least my fantasy team's doing well.
I mean, there were a lot of early years on Monday Night Football going down to games where you're just like, you know, I think one time I went to, this was in the early to mid 90s. We'll have to look this up later. I went to a Monday night game between the Colts and the Buffalo Bills where it was like 9-3.
Latu and Ward also practicing. So it looks like Mooney will be back on the field this week for the Colts.
So the Colts, those players, if they are playing, it will be down in Nashville. Are we going to take a road trip next?
Yes, we are.
We will head down. Eddie will load up a bachelorette bus, and we are heading to Nashville next. telling you, Nashville, and it's an awesome city, but the whole Nash Vegas feel to it, it does feel like it has become the bachelorette party capital of the world, and it's almost more like Vegas has the reputation of, the guys' weekend, even though now it's become a more family-friendly environment in Vegas. But it does feel like Nashville is kind of the girls' weekend getaway, right? I mean, literally, and you don't, if you're driving there and you have like a rental car with a blind spot in it, you don't have to necessarily worry about accidentally cutting off one of the bachelorette buses because you hear them coming from 3 blocks away. That's what it sounds like the whole time,
and that's
right?
not an ambulance, by the way.
That's right.
Those are all the woo girls.
Joining us now, and perhaps avoiding exactly that, he is from the Nashville Post talking about the Titans and Colts this weekend. He joins us on the guest line, John Glennon, on the program. John, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Was that a fair assessment of Broadway, or am I overselling it?
I think you nailed it. I think you hit it right on the head there. There's little doubt that we are the national capital of bachelorette parties, and kind of the fascinating thing is that they travel in every manner of vehicle now too. Like you mentioned the bus. Sometimes we see tractor pulls with loads of bachelorettes in the background.
Okay.
We've got other like vans or open bed trucks with pools in the back and hot tubs. So yeah, if you come to Nashville and you're around downtown on a weekend, you're going to see a few bachelorette parties without question.
I don't know that I would necessarily want to be running around telling everybody that my fiance is away on a tractor pull, right? You know what I mean? Like the sawed off top of the school bus is passable, but the tractor pull seems to be a little condescending. It's me. I don't know.
I don't see that, and think hey boy, I got to get on one of those tractors and ride around town. Just that doesn't strike me as a must do either. But apparently they're doing pretty well because they've been around for a while.
I'm going to be, before we get into the nuances and X's and O's of this game, John, I want it for anybody that's listening that may be going down to Nashville for this game this weekend, and it is a great spot to go down for Colts fans over the years to go for away games just because it's a great city. But I know that they are building the new stadium right next door. How much has that made it difficult in terms of parking and getting in and out of the stadium, or is it relatively unaffected from what people have done in the past?
The last couple of years have been, there's been construction there, and some people certainly have had to alter their usual strategies of getting there. That there's a lot more buses, a lot more parking areas around town that you can park and take buses or shuttles in there. Of course, we being the lucky few that still get the media parking, so it hasn't really affected us too much. I guess sad to say, the Titans have been kind of poor enough the last couple of years that crowds haven't exactly been filling up Nissan Stadium. So from that standpoint, the traffic hasn't been too bad, even with all that new construction going on.
Okay, that construction includes the team itself, obviously, because they're in a makeover period with Cam Ward at quarterback. It is very early, it goes without saying, and being, I think we now know in Indianapolis how long it takes to determine whether a guy's the guy or not. But when you have a quarterback like that, Tennessee has offensively come up with what sort of a scheme or what sort of looks that Indianapolis should anticipate seeing on Sunday?
Well, there's not necessarily a wealth of offensive options with this team right now. I think we're seeing some promise that maybe, Colts fans will get a look at some young receivers that will be around for a while. 2 rookies, Alec Iomanner and Chimere Dike, both have impressed in the first couple of weeks. Iomanner was on the receiving end of that crazy Cam Ward touchdown pass last week where he held the ball for 8 seconds. So those guys, keep an eye on them. Of course, Calvin Ridley is a talented veteran. But, you will see some things that Cam Ward did pretty well in college here. And, of course, one of the things that he excelled at in Miami was downfield passing. That hasn't gone so well, I would say, in the first couple of weeks. And I think it's something that most quarterbacks have to learn when they come from the college game, especially when they're big play kind of guys, that occasionally, you have to take that check down pass, that move the chains kind of pass, as opposed to taking, kind of one big shot downfield after another. And I think that's one of the first lessons that Cam Ward is learning.
How have they done in terms of just protection of Cam Ward?
Not well. Not too well. 11 sacks in the first 2 weeks, which is, kind of all the more disappointing because of the money they invested in that offensive line this year. They went out, first thing they did in free agency was they got Dan Moore, their new starting left tackle, signed him to a 4-year, $82 million deal. They got a veteran right guard from Detroit and Kevin Zeitler. Brought him at $9 million per year. They moved J.C. Latham, the tackle, from left to right, where he'd played in college. They figured that would be a good move. And at center, you've got a high price free agent from 2024 in Lloyd Cushenberry. But the end result so far has not been good. Probably of those 11 sacks, I think 3 have been attributed to Cam Ward. Maybe holding the ball a little bit too long. That still leaves you with 8 sacks. That are attributed to offensive line or running back situations. So it's not been a good start from that standpoint for the Titans, and that was something that certainly bothered this team quite a bit last year.
One of the things, John, I've always felt, John Glennon, our guest from the Nashville Post, talking about the Titans and Colts this Sunday, one aspect that I've always felt is really underrated, and we've talked about it a lot on this show, but I want to get your thoughts on it. You can go out and accumulate 5 offensive linemen that are all a 7.5 or higher in terms of their skill set. But if they're not used to playing with one another, oftentimes that's almost an inferior line to a group that might be all 6s but are used to one another's tendencies, especially when you're moving guys from left to right. It just seems to me like an offensive line takes literally a half a year for guys to understand what's around them and then kind of gel together as a line itself. Does your observation of the NFL tell you the same thing?
Yeah, I think you're accurate there. And you look at the 5-man front, and 3 of those 5 guys are new. 2 are absolutely new to the team. And then, as I mentioned, Latham moves from left tackle to right tackle this year. So, yeah, a lot of newness there. And because some of these guys are veterans, like a Zeitler and Cushenberry was coming back from injury, they didn't get a chance, in any of the preseason games to play all 5 of them together in any of the preseason contests either. And then we've already seen a couple of injuries, to the offensive line in the first 2 games. In fact, there's a chance basically the right side of the line, Zeitler and Latham might both miss, Sunday's game. We'll have to see how things play out. But, yeah, so they really haven't had that great amount of time together yet to kind of form that chemistry. And as of right now, as I say, it's not off to a good start. You could sort of say, okay, they've gone up against 2 very good defensive fronts, and that's true. Denver led the league in sacks last year, and the Rams have a pretty outstanding front 7 as well. But nonetheless, at some point, especially when you have the future of the franchise presumably playing quarterback, things have to get better in that department.
Okay, John, we're going to pretend that Shane Steichen calls you on the phone, right? And he says, John, Shane Steichen, head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, and then he speaks really fast and typically in very short cliches. But in this case, he's going to have a conversation with you. And he says, look, you cover the Tennessee Titans. I got a quarterback in Daniel Jones that has just been excellent for me through 2 games. I've got a tight end in Tyler Warren that is exactly as advertised. Got a good running back in Jonathan Taylor. I've got a bevy of receivers for Daniel Jones to throw around to. But I want to make sure that we're keeping on stride with what we've done through 2 games. Can you, John Glennon, please tell me what it is that Tennessee shows defensively that is their biggest vulnerability that I need to scheme to take advantage of to keep Daniel Jones confident and rolling?
Well, I would say, Shane, you've got a few options so far. I might not limit it to just one thing that you're going to have to, that is a deficiency on the Titans side of the ball, because they really haven't done a good job. For several years, they were at least very good at stopping the run. Last year was not a good, season for stopping the run, and so far the first two games, about 150 yards average against on the ground, and they've given up, two big chunk carries of over 40 yards, one in each of the two games. So that is troublesome for the Titans. And I would also say the pass rush is a deficiency for the Titans. You can certainly bank on Daniel Jones probably having a little bit more time than usual. The Titans have all of 2 sacks in the first 2 games, and really Jeffrey Simmons is the only guy that's been bringing consistent pressure in there. The Titans just don't have much on the edges right now. So, when you're kind of having a hard time stopping the run and you're having a hard time getting after the passer, that doesn't necessarily bode too well for the defense.
This is season number, John, I'm trying to guess here. Would this be season 27 in Nashville for the Titans, somewhere in there?
That sounds about right. I think that is accurate.
Out of curiosity, and I call this the Willie McGee factor. Willie McGee is the player that in St. Louis, he is a beloved figure. But I think people outside of St. Louis would be surprised to know that Willie McGee is, Jeff Foster's that way here, right? Like, I don't know, Jeff Foster was this super popular pacer, and people outside Indiana would probably be like, really? Jeff Foster was a beloved guy? Give me the player for the Titans overall that is a beloved figure that perhaps is not thought of outside of Nashville as being a long-term Titan.
That's a good question. I might think of one who unfortunately, passed away, not all that long ago, and that would be Frank Wycheck, the tight end, who played for so many years.
He had a pretty big pass completion in his career.
Yes, he did. He was part of the Music City Miracle, of course, through that pass all the way across the field to Kevin Dyson against the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs, and Dyson scored on a last-second, 75-yard touchdown return. But yeah, he made maybe 1 or 2 Pro Bowls potentially, but because of the kind of person he was, he wasn't an uber talented, skilled, type player, and I believe was originally a UDFA. He became a very much beloved type of player here in Nashville. Was a great, target for Steve McNair over the years. And afterwards too, he remained very much a part of the community for several years. So that one comes to mind. I would say top of the charts as a person that maybe around the country, doesn't get as much notice, but certainly here, again, I would say a beloved type character.
Okay,
here.
I'm going to guess the 4 most popular players in Titans history. You ready?
All right.
McNair.
Yeah.
Eddie George.
Yeah.
I'm going to go curveball here. Javon Curse.
Possibly. Yeah. Possibly, I would say.
Kerry Collins.
Don't know if I can give you Kerry Collins on the Mount Rushmore, if you will.
Okay, who am I
but
missing?
certainly very popular.
Chris Johnson?
Chris Johnson's a good
one. Johnson would certainly be a good one.
Well, Kevin Dyson?
Kevin Dyson for what he did, sure. I would say, here's another one that doesn't get too much national attention, but Derek Mason was a tremendous, tremendous wide receiver.
Just
for the
because
Titans.
he's an Indy native, we're going to throw Blaine Bishop in there.
There you go. That's another good one too. Yeah, he started in Houston, but certainly had some great years, some Pro Bowl years for the Titans here as well.
Okay, John, before we let you go, I'm curious of this, in just being on the beat in Nashville. That is such a growing city and such a great city, and this is both of these leagues. I'm kind of fascinated that baseball has been one that's been rumored. I mean, when the White Sox, it seems like Nashville always comes up in conversation. between the NBA and MLB, which one is more likely to eventually land themselves a franchise in Nashville?
That's a good question. I suspect it would be MLB, and maybe one of the main reasons I think, you've got an NBA franchise in Memphis on the other side of the state, and it's only 3 hours, three and a half hours away, so maybe the league would probably steer clear of that, I would think. And there's a tremendous amount of enthusiasm for MLB here. There's no doubt about, a ton of Atlanta fans here, a ton of St. Louis fans, both those cities within driving distance. The one thing they don't have right now is that huge, walleted, deep-pocketed guy that's going to say, yeah, here's the money, for an expansion team if that is indeed the case. So, a lot of people say maybe it's going to start stretching the sports dollar too thin. Nashville is not a massive city. And you
got the Predators there too, which are, the Predators are a huge sell, right?
Yeah, they sure are. They've been selling out for a while. So that is kind of one of the big questions, if there's enough sports dollar to go around, especially with MLB. Obviously you've got the 82 home games. So yeah, that's a question mark, but I know the enthusiasm certainly is there for an expansion team.
Well, John, we appreciate the time as always. We will probably reach out to you again here coming up just before Halloween, as a matter of fact, when the Titans have to come up here, and we'll see where things stand there. But certainly look forward to this Sunday and appreciate the time and the perspective on the game.
Sounds good. All right, thanks for having me, guys.
John Glennon joining us from the Nashville Post. You probably heard Eddie in the background. Did you hear one of the bachelorette parties in the background? Woo! I'm telling you, you do it. You're like your own human siren is what you are when you do that, right?
Yeah, when I did the woos back-to-back like I did earlier, I was like, oh, that was probably not a good idea. It sounded a little bit like an emergency vehicle.
And you can't do that on the radio, you can't play those because people might be in their car. Now, and I can't recall, you said you have or have not done like a weekend in Nashville.
I have not.
It really is.
I've done Gatlinburg, but I've not done Nashville.
Yeah, for basically being an exact 5-hour drive, it really is a cool city. And the Broadway thing is, it's basically 2 blocks, but it is unreal how crowded it gets and how lively it gets. And they've got they have an amphitheater that just opened, I think, 2 years ago, that is in like a former rock quarry. It's in Franklin, which is basically the Carmel of Nashville, but it's on the far south side of the city. But it is an awesome venue. Now, I was there for, I believe, if it wasn't the first show, it was one of the first shows with IndyCar. We were down there. Michael Young got us tickets to see Greta Van Fleet. Are you familiar with Greta Van Fleet?
Familiar with Greta Van Fleet,
They were massive. Like, there was this huge crowd, and everybody was going crazy over it. And they had a couple of songs that I knew, and it was a good show. They put on a good show. I've never heard of them since. I have, but it seems to me like they were going to be the next big thing, and then they plateaued. Am I wrong in that?
You're probably not wrong in that, no.
Like, what level now are they in terms of bands?
Probably a 4 or 5 if you were doing it on a scale of 10.
Really?
3, 4.
When they first came out, wasn't there thought, though, that they were, like, on their way, they were rising up into, like, the 8 or 10 category?
Probably, yeah.
They sound just like Led Zeppelin. If you, like, literally the guy, and I think he even was, like, kind of dressed like Led Zeppelin. It was a little bit like, they were very good, but for a second I felt like I was, they were going to come out and say, like, it's Get the Lead Out, your Led Zeppelin tribute band. And before the show, Michael Young hooked us up somehow with, he's like, yeah, I have passes in here where we can go in and, like, get a beer or whatever. And we were in this little area behind the stage as the warm-up band was playing. And they brought out this little thing with food on it, and I went and got some food and kind of not cut in front of this guy, but I got essentially the last of the food offering, and the guy behind me looked very dejected.
Was the food
and
good?
Disappointed. The food was good. And then I found out that the guy that the food was actually for the band. And I didn't realize it, but we were in the little area with the band. So there's a little guy in like a leisure suit, and I'm just like, oh, sorry, I didn't realize that this food was for you.
That's a yikes.
Yeah, it was a little uncomfortable. But the band, they put on a decent show. But anyway, it is for, and I haven't heard of. I would assume there are a lot of people heading down there, right? Heading down for the game from Indy.
Tickets would be cheap, drivable.
What do you think that what's right now? What is the entry price?
$59. That's my guess. $59.
All right, we'll look it up. I'll go with $41. One guy that is going to be there, Matt Taylor, and he joins us next. That sounds like Zeppelin, doesn't it? It's a good song.
Yeah, I can hear it.
And they put on a good show. Greta Van Fleet. But there was definitely part of it where I was like, is this a Led Zeppelin tribute band? Joining us now, he is the Robert Plant of NFL play-by-play announcers.
I was thinking about this, Jake, because he goes on the morning show on Fridays, and he has this little section of their conversation where it's Taylor's Tidbits.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking maybe we rephrase this, in some way or form to where it's time to get tailored. Or it's time to visit the tailor.
It's time to get tailored. Typically, if you get tailored, you're getting an orange fluff cake from Taylor's Bakery. And I think Matt Taylor would be cool with that, right? If I said that's what that should be, getting tailored should be reserved for. Let's ask Matt what he'd like to be our Thursday visit to be known as. Matt Taylor joins us now. Any thoughts on that, Matt?
Hey, listen, it's your show. You can do whatever you want. Those are the rules. When they put your name on it, you can do whatever you want.
Listen,
we could visit the tailor, and I'll do your inseam, and I'll make sure you got the proper length, and it's cut and trim, and
that's good
I'll get
too.
you looking good.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. And I do like the fact that I don't agree with you necessarily on the fact that if my name's on it, I can do what I want. But I do have my feet up on the desk right now for what that's worth.
Well, it's not my show, I can tell you that.
All right. Well, it is now, at least when you're on. Okay, let's get to this, and that is the good news is when it comes to the Colts and Titans on Sunday, looks like from the Indianapolis standpoint, the health report is good, or at least better today than yesterday, correct?
Yeah, the non-contact jersey, the red jersey that guys in the concussion protocol wear to make sure that they can get through all the different 5 steps of the process of the concussion protocol. Charvarius Ward is out of that, or those steps, I should say. So he's back at practice in full yesterday. I would think that his designation today would be similar. And then, of course, Tyler Warren and Josh Downs were back at practice today, which was good. I think it was more of a precaution rest day, for both guys. It's a long season. Warren played over 60 snaps, which is a lot for a tight end in week 2. So, just kind of monitoring things, just keeping an eye on guys' usage and, just the wear and tear in their body. So kind of a normal thing to be, cautious on Wednesday, but good to see them back out today and trending towards, being fully available for Sunday. And same thing with Latu. I think he was limited yesterday. We'll see what that says today, but it'd be big on the defensive side of the ball to get both Ward and Latu back, two difference makers, within their respective layers of that defense.
Matt, let me give you an observation from afar, and then you tell me as somebody who is much closer to it if I'm even within the ballpark of accurate, because I think this may be completely inaccurate, okay? But my outside observation is that Daniel Jones is kind of one of those leaders that, the quarterback naturally is the leader of the team. I mean, you just are, and when you're the quarterback. And leadership comes in a lot of different forms. I've always said that, Matt, I think you were around it, when Peyton Manning would turn the corner in the locker room, it was like, he was the alpha and there was no question. Everything kind of stopped.
Everybody shut up, right?
Totally. It was like, what? And he didn't have to say anything. I mean, he wasn't asking that of people. It just happened that way, right?
Absolutely.
And Daniel Jones, to me, and we don't know him well, but he strikes me as the kind of guy that isn't a push the chest out and overly vociferous, like rah-rah, pat on the back, lifting up teammates kind of guy, but rather I've just got my playbook and I keep my nose down and I do what's asked of me and I turn my homework in on time, and therefore guys have learned to respect that I've gone about it that way, and that's my form of leadership. Any accuracy to that?
Yeah, I think you nailed it spot on, to be honest with you. Because that's exactly what I see too. And when I'm, noticing the vibe and the energy in the locker room, I pick up on the same things where guys, Daniel's not, you're right. I mean, Daniel's not like he's not going to point at guys and scream in guys' face when they make a mistake, but he's not going to just let those things go too. I think there's a good little balance there of lifting guys up, but also holding guys accountable too. And it's all the stuff that he does for himself, because he is, to your point, very much a, first guy in, last guy out, very professional, cares deeply about, wanting to be good. And I also think that he has a chip on his shoulder, to change the perception of his ability to play quarterback in the NFL. And I mean, through 2 games, he is the next version of, whatever you want to say, Geno Smith or Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield, career resurgence, guy that goes to a different, setting, a new team, seems to be fitting in greatly with Shane Steichen. So far, so good. Absolutely, through 2 games. But he's a quiet guy, but also is very intentional about everything that he does. I mean, we're hearing stories about how he's inviting guys to go to dinner and, they're going to go bowling. And I mean, if you just walk down to the cafeteria, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, you see him sitting with a different guy or a different group of guys every single day, because he's just trying to be intentional about connecting with everybody on the team. And I think you're right. I think you hit on something that's really important. It's really the way that we, for whatever reason, how we've gotten here as a football society, how we judge quarterbacks and how we put so much on their plate. It's really unfair. I mean, we have quarterback power rankings that come out every week, and we scrutinize every throw that they make. One week they're great, the next week they're a bum. I mean, we're just so fickle about it. But the way Daniel Jones has been able to come in here and really provide the culture of the team, and I think that's something that the Colts were interested in too, to see how that played out when they named him as the starting quarterback, because that's something else. I mean, not only do you have to know the playbook and you have to know all the guys and you have to know all the little intricacies of the offense, but it's unfair for the quarterback to sort of be in charge of the culture and the atmosphere of the locker room. But that's what he's done in short order as well. So again, I've said this a million times, that the biggest compliment I can give Daniel Jones is that he does not at all look like a guy that's only been here since March. He looks like he's been a part of this team now for 3 to 4 years, based on the level of respect that, all the guys have for him. And certainly you get more respect when, you put in all the work and then you just ball out the way that he's done in the first 2 games of the season for Colts.
Matt, you talk about, just like in the cafeteria, like in the facility, or, in the downtime. And there is downtime that does take place when these guys are around each other as much as they are, even though there's meetings and films and all that. And I've asked this before, I think, but to players, but I'm curious if you have observed this. It would be my feeling that if you were running an NFL franchise, your defensive backs and your receivers, I know that they go into different rooms and they're different units with different coaches, but it seems as though it would behoove your organization to have those guys interact a lot together, because of the fact that a receiver, when he's lining, if he's talking to the defensive backs on his roster, he can get an idea of what's in the head of a DB and vice versa, right? So that they are getting an idea of what the opposition that's trying to shut them down on a Sunday has in mind, and vice versa. Do you see any of that at all in terms of guys talking to their own teammates to get an idea of what the opposition would be doing for them?
Yeah, great point. All the time. It happens all the time. You see those guys talking to each other in the locker room. They're sitting next to each other and, at their locker stalls, going through their iPads and watching film and breaking down the playbook. And you also see it too, and I think this is really important, and I don't know if this happens everywhere, but I have seen it happen here multiple times over the years, where the defensive coordinator, or at the very least a secondary coach, guy that's overseeing both cornerbacks and safeties, will sit down with the quarterback and say, this is like, if we saw this play from the Colts offense, this is how we would attack.
Yeah.
Or, if you're a young quarterback, it's like, teach me your way of interpreting defense. When I see, the second, just throwing out just, random examples, right? If you see, a safety drop in the box in this coverage or in this situation in the red zone, this is more likely than not what they're trying to do here. So, even though they're on different sides of the ball, there's a lot of crossover and a lot of help between, offense and defense, players and coaches throughout the course of a 17-game season in the NFL.
I don't know if you heard it, Matt, but I think it was at the beginning of this week. I played some audio, and look, I know in Indianapolis, the playing quotes from Tom Brady, isn't exactly the most probably popular thing, but Brady was on. I think it was. I'm not sure what show he was on. Colin Cowherd, yeah, and he was talking about when he was a young quarterback when he first took over for Drew Bledsoe. Unfortunately, tragically, the quarterback's coach for the Patriots at the time passed away unexpectedly during camp. So Bill Belichick overtook the quarterback coach role, even though he was the head coach. So Brady talked about how basically the first year that he was learning the quarterbacking position, he was learning it by Belichick saying to him, look, I can't tell you about footwork and rotation or whatever else, but I can tell you about every defense you're going to see.
Yeah.
And
right.
You know what I mean? And so he was learning it from the outside in. And as a result of that, and you could see it. And I think you can see it with Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, and the fact that those guys were human computers that could look over a defense, and their biggest strength was in looking at an alignment and figuring out what the best play was or how to get out of a bad play. And Daniel Jones strikes me as the kind of guy that has a similar process. May not go as deep into his checks, but is able to determine and quickly figure out and process what's going to work. Has that been your assessment through 2 games?
Absolutely. And, just to piggyback off the Tom Brady thing, I mean, it's that famous, video footage of him, in that droopy, long collared, white T-shirt at the combine. I mean, he looks like my neighbor, very physically unimpressive, right? But, I mean, that was Tom Brady's superpower. He was an average quarterback in terms of athleticism, but the supercomputer part that you just brought up, that's where he was just different. And then you took that mental ability and you paired that with a guy like Bill Belichick to bring the best out of him with a football IQ. And then he was just off the charts as he continued to grow and develop, physically in the NFL. But yeah, Daniel Jones has that too. And I think he's even probably, I know definitively way more athletic than Tom Brady ever was at any point in his career. So you pair the mental part of the game with Daniel Jones and his deceptive running ability and, being able to get out of the pocket and extend plays and get first downs. And I think you really have something. And, truth be told, that's where I think he won the job. That's how I think he won the job over Anthony Richardson, is that at this stage in their careers, presently speaking, Daniel Jones is just further along with pre-snap recognition and being able to get the Colts into good plays and out of bad plays. I mean, obviously Anthony Richardson has all of the physical tools, but it was just the mental side where I think Daniel Jones had the leg up. And again, through 2 games, the Colts have been completely validated in making that choice.
I noticed that when you wanted to give the stereotype of just your average non-athletic guy, you went with your neighbor and not yourself. Right. he looked more like he's kind of a fat doughy guy, like my neighbor, right?
Well, just insert cliche here. You can do the what was it? Was it Bill Tobin? My postman knows more about football than Mel Kiper.
That's right.
I could have said my mom or postman or neighbor or whatever, right?
That's right. Well, Matt, certainly enjoy Nashville. You will hear plenty of this in the background, Eddie. Woo! From the bachelorette parties, we'll see if you hear it from Colts fans that make the drive down, because it hopefully will be a good day for the Colts on Sunday, but we shall see, and we will be listening as well. Appreciate the time as always, Matt.
All right, I'll count them up for you. I'll just, I'll go from here to the sports bar, the hotel to the sports bar, and count how many bachelorette parties I see just for you.
I mean, over under of 6 on a half-block drive. I can tell you that right now. No question.
There's at least 800 in the general area.
Yes, that is correct.
Yep.
All right, Matt, we'll be listening. Appreciate it.
All right, see you guys.
All right, Matt Taylor, the voice of the Colts.
You just got tailored.
That's not bad, actually. That's not bad, but you just got tailored. Not bad. And yeah, I guess I like, you know what? I like getting, like when I get a suit tailored, I kind of like it because, like I feel like all of a sudden I'm svelte, even though I'm not. But like they're hemming things up.
Jake, I was proud of
Tightening
your
things up.
maturity
Mhm.
when he said that he could get your inseam and make sure it was all tight and snug.
Well, I am in fact maturing. Thank you for noticing. J&B's up next. We'll do the crossover brought to you by Love Heating and Air, love-hvac.com, 317-353-2141. We will find out what John has lined up for his big program. We'll do it next. One of the notable alums of You Can't Do That on Television, Alanis Morissette. JMV is, that's who was singing that song, by the way. JMV is up north at the District Tap North Side. Fabulous place on 82nd Street. It is technically 82nd because it is just to the east of the David Wolf Bridge. That's where it crosses over from 86th Street. John, big show lined up, right?
Big show lined. I love the District Tap. I love being on the north side, downtown. It is a fantastic place. Michael Pittman Jr. on the show a little bit later on. Obviously, a tremendous role so far with the Colts as they started 2-0, get the Titans on Sunday. Mike Chappell later on. Brett Halverson and I with our picks. The samples always flow here as well every Thursday. Love it up here. Plus, Jake, I hit up the Carmel for the first time, Goodwill. And it was the mother load, brothers.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure, right?
The mother load.
What'd you end up with?
Yes. I bought a lot of Ralph Lauren stuff. Shout out to Hamilton County and Carmel for that. So if you happen to come down here later on today and I'm wearing your shirt, give me a shout out, would you? Because I might be.
One of these days I'm going to know that you went to one of the places near where I live if you're wearing one of the 464 Verizon or IndyCar Series shirts that I took down there. You know what I mean?
I'm telling you. I know. I do, though. I have not seen it yet, but people have noticed before where you can find like a JMV takeover or a JMV shirt at some of these places.
That's
I don't know whether to be thrilled or disappointed in that.
Exactly.
But
right.
It happens. It does happen for sure.
We were talking about this earlier, and with people getting ready, and I would assume there are a fair amount of people that are going to go down for the game this weekend in Nashville because Nashville's a cool place, destination place to go. And then somehow that segued in my mind into times where you went on the road to go see your favorite team play, or when you went to a concert that you were super excited about and either experience totally sucked. Anything come to mind to you?
Yeah, the toilet known as Arrowhead Stadium in the playoffs. The Colts and the Chiefs. How many years ago was that? I hate that place.
That was when didn't you have to push a bus out of the snow?
Yeah, me and Drew Storen and Tucker Barnhart had a couple of major leaguers and me, and actually it ended up getting on the Weather Channel. They actually contacted me on social media and said, "Hey, can we use this of these guys and you pushing these out of the way so our bus could get up the off ramp?" I got hit by ice balls. I didn't even have Colts gear on. And I got hit by ice balls. I was pissed and ready to be done with it. I hate Arrowhead Stadium.
Okay. And then you rode a bus back after that?
We rode the bus back to the airport, and the pilots, I think, had to rest. So we ended up getting out of there at about 1 a.m. I was spent. We had a snowstorm like the night before, and it was some odd stuff going on.
I remember that.
I hate that. Now, I love Dodger Stadium. I've been there before. I love that. There are a variety. I love going to London. That was great. But Arrowhead Stadium, everybody talks about it being great. It's a hole. Can't stand it.
By the way, since you were at District Tap, you are in the neighborhood near where I grew up, and that is also where Chris and John Love grew up. I've known those guys my entire life, and they are the absolute best, John.
They are. It is. And if you got anything that needs to be going down right now, I would check the efficiency because we're going to get here into early fall. Then before you know it, we'll be in the wintertime. Rough summer, right? So make sure it's working efficiently. Love-HVAC.com. John and Chris Love sponsoring Jake and I on the crossover daily.
John, we'll throw it out to you shortly. And Michael Pittman Jr. going to be joining you at what time?
I don't know, but at some point he will.
Okay.
Or else.
So stick around and keep listening because Michael Pittman Jr., wide receiver of the Colts, and, of course, John, Brent, all of it, all out there at District Tap on the north side. And it will be going on until 6 o'clock there. Again, our thanks over the course of today. Tom Dienhart for joining us. Tony East as well. Matt Taylor, who you just heard from. John Glennon down in Nashville. We will be back with you tomorrow for a Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday. We'll do it tomorrow beginning at noon, and I thank you for listening to Query & Company.